Welcome back to section 3. We are going to jump into what I call the action and communication portion of PR planning. We've talked about research up till now and planning based on your research. We're going to get into implementing your plan and evaluating it. What we're going to talk about today is really action and communication, implementation of your strategies and tactics. Well, what's the difference between action and communication? Well, when you are working on a public relations program, you can talk about what you're going to do without actually doing it, or you can do it and then don't talk about it. So talking about what you're doing and doing it are two different things, and they need to work together. In your assigned readings for section 3, you're going to read about something that happened at McDonald's in California in 1984. I'm going to kind of skim over this because you're going to read it, but a man entered a McDonald's and started shooting people, and he ended up killing 22 people. McDonald's responded, and that's what I want to focus on here. Is one of their executives was having dinner in Chicago at the time. He got a phone call, and here's what McDonald's did. Here's how they responded. So read the part about this San Ysidro massacre in a McDonald's in California, and then think about McDonald's response. First of all, they had to address, well, what kind of stakeholder concerns needed to be addressed. Here they are. Fear and outrage. People were mad and upset. Could they go to McDonald's and be safe? Well, how would this affect the performance of McDonald's? And would people long-term be committed to McDonald's, to eating there? And would McDonald's be committed to that community? Here's what they did. They suspended all advertising for several days. For 15 straight hours, that executive talked with the media. They approved a $1 million contribution to Survivors Fund. Senior executives flew the next day to attend funerals of some of the victims, and they permanently closed the store. So here we have a bunch of actions, right? They permanently closed the store, they visited the funerals, but they also communicated, talking about what their response with the media. But what really communicates here is the action. They did something. So when we talk about PR plans and implementing them, action really is important. It's not enough to just talk about what you're doing. Here are a few other things that they did. They donated the property to the city, and they gave the McDonald's store they gave a new store to the franchise owners. They did some things here, and they also communicated about them. When we are communicating about our actions, you'll read in the book about developing your message. I want to go beyond that now a little bit and talk about, well, how do you choose the right channel to communicate your message? Do you go through social media, through newspapers and TV? How do you choose the right channel? First, you have to base it on what you know about the audience. If you want to increase knowledge, generally mass media is best, but if you want to motivate people, if you want to get them to do something, interpersonal communication is best. And there are a lot of different channels for these, for both mass communication and interpersonal communication. The news media will run your story if you can demonstrate that your product, your service, whatever you're doing your PR plan for, has an impact on the audience, and a wide impact, meaning it will affect a lot of people. For example, have you noticed how the weather always takes up a lot of time on the evening newscast? That's because it's affected by everybody, it affects everybody. Whereas sports on the news broadcast is usually generally short because that impacts fewer people. Proximity is, I'm here in Lubbock, Texas. If something happens in Wichita, Kansas, and there's news there, it may not be news here. So if you can frame your story to make it, give it a local slant, it'll be more successful. Don't talk about something that happened last year. Talk about something that happened today. Prominence refers to a story is going to be picked up by the media will be more likely to be picked up by the media if it's like the mayor of a town that did something versus the garbage man, right? And if something's new or novel, it is also likely to be picked up. So these things can need to be considered when framing your story for the news media. Now we'll get back into, so that's a little bit about implementation. You'll read about it in the book. Let's jump into evaluation, assessment. That's what I call evaluation. You have to know how your PR program did, because that turns into, well, how do you adjust your next PR program based on the results of your last one? A lot of companies and organizations measure the success of their PR programs through things, what I call outputs, media clips. How many news releases did we send out? How many people came to our event? How many people visited our website? But these aren't really measures of impact. Impact is, if I want to decrease the rate of heart disease among women in America, is measuring the media clips about that really going to measure the impact? No. To really evaluate if your program worked, you need to look at the numbers and do some research. Did the incidence of heart disease really decrease, right? It's not enough to know how many people visited the American Heart Association website. The book talks about these, how your objectives at the beginning of your PR program can only be evaluated if they're specific and they're measurable, they're achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So if I want to reduce the incidence of tooth decay among Texas children in 1 year, well, after a year, I can actually do research to find out if the incidence of tooth decay decreased. Now, here, a 2001 PRSA survey revealed that PR professionals most often evaluate the success of their PR program through media clips and intuition, which are, like we discussed before, it doesn't measure the impact of a program. A lot of people say, well, hey, we got 51 inches of news, of coverage about our product or service or organization in the newspaper. That's equal to, hey, we would have had to pay $3,000 in advertising to obtain that. That's what we call ad equivalency. There are a bunch of reasons why that's not a good measure. So look through this slide and read about it in the book as well. A few rules when we talk about evaluation. What these basically say is you have to obtain benchmarks before you begin your plan, right? You need to know what's the rate of heart disease now so that you can compare it to what's the rate of heart disease after your plan. 1 and 2 address that. Number 3 says you should be measuring and evaluating the program during the program. It's not enough just to measure it all at the very end. Evaluation is important because it leads right back into research. Evaluation is post-plan research. Well, it also can serve as pre-plan research for the next program. So do the readings, have fun. Let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to communicating with you online.